Jos Leidekers, Dritan Rejepi, Rawa Majid, Hakan Ayik, and so on. Those are some of the world's biggest criminals, who all have one thing in common. They're either still hiding in Turkey, or they've done so for a long time. Forget about Dubai, it seems as if their spot as the go-to hideout has been taken. But why this change? What makes Turkey a better hideout spot for the world's most wanted criminals? You'd honestly be surprised. This is the story about Turkey, and many of its criminals taking refuge there. For a long time now, there have been frequent signals that have indicated the emergence of international gangs establishing themselves in Turkey. So, a logical question to ask is, why choose Turkey as a hiding spot when you're a criminal? There are several different factors that come into play and make Turkey a rather interesting hub for the world's largest gangs. Its strategic location is one of the key factors. Turkey's geographical position at the crossroads of Europe and the Middle East make it a good middle ground for criminals, especially those involved in smuggling and trafficking. Additionally, its lax visa policies make it extremely easy for the rich to acquire Turkish citizenship. Turkey is something that's called the Golden Passport Program. All you have to do is either invest $500,000 in Turkey, block the money for 3 years in a bank account, or buy real estate worth at least $400,000. Once done, one can request Turkish citizenship, if the other usual conditions are met. There aren't too many questions asked about one's occupation or where the money came from, and that's exactly how a criminal likes it. Turkish tax expert Ozan Bingöl said, "If someone suddenly comes today with $1 million, the authorities are not allowed to ask where this money comes from due to regulations. They just have to make sure there is no arrest warrant issued by Interpol against them until the moment of attaining citizenship." However, there have been cases of criminals with an arrest warrant out for them that still managed to hide in Turkey with a fake identity. One of Sweden's biggest criminals, Rawa Majid, for example. He entered the country using the fake identity of Miran Otman. Corruption and weak law enforcement really don't help either. The previous Minister of Interior, Süleyman Soylu, had ties to the underworld himself. Money talked. During his tenure, there have been very few serious investigations or arrest warrants issued against these underworld figures, despite there being plenty of reasons to do so. In the rare case that they were arrested, some were suddenly released. Sedat Baker, a well-known Turkish criminal who became a whistleblower with millions of views on his YouTube channel, even openly accused Süleyman of being corrupt. His tenure as Minister of the Interior ended on the 4th of June 2023, and that's when everything changed in Turkey. A man called Ali Yerlikaya became the new Minister of Interior. Ever since his appointment, there has not gone a day by without the arrest of a notorious criminal. What his predecessor didn't do, Ali does with full force. Since his start, he has been setting up large-scale operations, leading to many different arrests. On his X account, he gladly shares the results of his efforts. Drug traffickers, money launderers, fraudsters, heads of international gangs. No one seems safe anymore. By now, I've covered many criminals from various parts of the world. Plenty of them either resided, still reside, or have been arrested in Turkey. So who are the most notable criminals? One of the most notable and recent arrests was none other than Dritan Rejepi, one of Albania's biggest drug smugglers and head of the Compania Belo syndicate. On the 10th of November 2023, a well-planned operation led to Dritan's arrest in his enormous villa. He had entered Turkey with a fake passport registered in the name of Benjamin Omar Perez Garcia. The villa was thoroughly searched and footage showed weapons being found, as well as large sums of cash and luxury goods such as watches and other jewelry. Definitely one of the higher profile arrests made in Turkey. Just a few days before Dritan was arrested, it was Hakan Ayik's turn. Hakan Ayik is still known as the biggest drug dealer Australia has ever seen. Ever since the early 2000s, Hakan got himself involved in the underworld and eventually grew an empire estimated to bring in $1.5 billion a year at its peak. This led to Hakan becoming Australia's most wanted man. As a result, Hakan fled to Turkey somewhere in the beginning of the 2010s. He kept his business running as usual while living in luxury. He was able to do so for over a decade, but to everyone's surprise, Hakan got arrested on the 2nd of November 2023. As he had been in Turkey for so long already, no one expected him to get caught anytime soon. He sure looked surprised during his arrest. Another criminal that has fallen in Turkey is Dutch criminal Isaac B., a young and very wealthy drug smuggler that was seen as Jos Leidekers' right-hand man. But more on him later, by the way. After it got too hot for him in the Netherlands, Isaac briefly stayed in Dubai and Ghana before fleeing to Turkey. As he was seen as an integral part of Jos Leydekers' organization, the hunt for Isaac intensified. On the 25th of June 2023, he was arrested in Isparta, a city in the southwest of Turkey. In a desperate attempt to avoid prosecution, he allegedly yelled to the police officers, "Give me a phone and all of your bank account numbers, I will immediately send you 4 million euros. Unfortunately for him, that did not work, and Isaac is still, till this day, incarcerated in Turkey. Two other notable figures are two of Sweden's biggest criminals, Rawa Majid and Ismail Abdo, the two men who were once in the same gang flooding Sweden with drugs, but by now, sworn enemies, engaged in a full-on feud with each other. Both of them entered Turkey several years ago, as Sweden got too dangerous for them. They're also a prime example that housing criminals does not go without the necessary consequences, because these two brought the violence from Sweden with them to Turkey. On the 6th of September, there was a shootout. On CCTV footage, it can be seen that two men arrive on a moped. One of them hops off and fires several shots towards 5 people. These 5 people, in turn, fired back. No one was seriously injured. By now, Rawa Majid has fled Turkey. Swedish police expect Ismail Abdo still resides there. Belgian criminal Abdelila LM is another criminal that remains in the country, though not necessarily untouched. Abdelila, a drug smuggler sentenced to a total of 22 years in prison in Belgium, roamed free in Turkey for a long time. In February 2023, he was detained in Istanbul because his residence papers were expired, and subsequently put in a closed immigration centre. However, here's the catch. Shortly after his arrest, he left the closed immigration centre with an ankle bracelet, despite being wanted by Belgium. This was most likely revenge, as Belgian authorities refused to extradite a Turkish native back to Turkey. Then, we still have none other than Jos Leydekers, who is seen as the Netherlands' most wanted criminal at the moment. He is one of the few criminals that's allegedly still roaming free in Turkey unscathed. Jos, also known as Bolle Jos, is suspected of smuggling at least 15,000 kilos of coke throughout Europe. Dutch police also suspect him of being involved in the disappearance of the godmother of coke, Naima Jalal, and other violent acts. Over the last few years, Dutch and Belgian authorities have ramped up their investigative efforts in order to arrest and prosecute Jos. They've put pressure on him by openly marking him as one of Europe's most dangerous fugitives and put a €200,000 reward on his head. They have also arrested several suspected key players of his organization, some of which were family members, with the aim of weakening his organization. Interestingly enough, several of them were also arrested in Turkey. The goal is clear: dismantle his organization piece by piece and eventually arrest the boss, Jos Leydekers. Only time will tell if they can manage to do so. It seems as if the good times for criminals currently residing in Turkey are over, thanks to Minister Ali Yerlikaya. Over the past year or so, it seems as if Turkey is working on putting an end to the safe haven allegations. They've managed to arrest one high-profile criminal after another. Are they sweeping their streets clean, just like Dubai has done over the past few years? Dubai was perceived as a safe haven for criminals too, but started arresting many of them as of late. It brings up a lot of questions. Which country will become the new safe haven? Share your thoughts in the comments. Some might say these arrests are nothing more than a facade, just evidence that Turkey can use to say, look, we're actively battling crime in our country, meanwhile there are still plenty of criminals living their lives there. Well, for now, they've successfully swept multiple criminals off their streets. For once, I decided to cover a topic again, instead of a person. Would you like to see more videos on certain topics, instead of always about a specific person? Please let me know. As always, consider leaving a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and I hope to see you in the next one.